Hi, Saturday chat. Let's get this right on the go immediately. So I just quickly took this box top off just to remind you of the Mustang, whose wings I'm busy on, and I would like to get the wings finished before I start other projects. Top Flight, not bad box art at all, but the Corsair is an even nicer box art. I will be doing this as a P51B. I quite like that idea. So just a reminder that that's the box for that one. And this was the box top for the Spitfire, which is probably the least, well, I don't know, actually, I'm making that up. I haven't built a picker, and I shouldn't make assumptions before I've built one, but I'm thinking it's probably not quite as good. And I forgot to tell you that I did actually do a bit of work. So if you remember, I'd said that I forgot to taper the aileron. So I have taken that off and I have delaminated the fiberglass, which you can see has been done there, but you can't actually see the fiberglassing. All you can see is the discoloration from the resin. That is one huge job, but I was stubborn enough to actually do it. So you know that is now in line over there. Once this covering is on, it will be in line over there. So that one's done. That just needs refiberglassing. You may see I did damage the surface. It's almost impossible not to damage the surface when you're delaminating. And I did my fiberglassing pretty well. It was actually a good exercise in seeing how very well that sticks. And here is the second one. Almost see better on the bottom surface, so you'll see some damage there. Not too bad. So that'll just get a light filler. There's just a few holes to fill. I don't think it's coming through on the video. So you won't even really see the tapering. There's the thick end, there's the thinner end. And as I say, that Mustang is quite standoff as well, because that's not the exact shape of the aileron in any case. So while I'm being, I'm trying to do, you sort of can't have an aileron that's sticking out into the airflow, so you do need to taper that. That's a job that sort of has to be done, but it's by no means being pedantic about the thing, because in all respects, really, with this wing, it was just sort of a practice in doing a lot of things nicely, not doing other things. So as I say, the next time round it will get retracts. This one does not get retracts. I was just going to keep it fairly simple. I did mention in a previous video that drawing the panel lines on, and I only drew a few on, drawing the panel lines on with a marker did not benefit my fiberglassing afterwards, because the fiberglass reacts to the marker chemical, so you actually don't get a nice smooth fiberglassing over the panel line lines. So just a reminder, wheelie is first. The marina boat, which once I've sort of, I'm now going to be able to clear this table to a large degree and get wheelie done here and get the boat done. And then the Mustang wing, and only then will we start looking at anything outside of that. Of course, the plastic models will go on. They go on all the time. This Harvard canopy cowling started me off on 1/7 scale Harvards. I bought this complete from a guy, really an atrocious wreck. But look at that curvature there. That's just one of the sort of, you know, non-scale things on this one. This one had the engine cut out, which I then closed up, sort of one of the earlier fiberglass practices that I did. That came out very nicely. Completely smooth there, completely smooth there. Very nice practice on that one. I was happy with that. But this won't get used for anything. This was just part of it and sort of part of getting to know the whole thing. That was the one which I ended up cutting into smithereens. The fuselage was so wrong, I decided to cut this and cut that to correct it, and in the end just cut up the whole thing and realized that the whole Harvard was completely and utterly wrong, which then sent me down the route of looking for blueprints online. So I'm quite happy with the way that all went anyway. Okay, I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of random things here, somewhat random. Let's maybe first get this one out of the way. So I did spray a second gloss coat. I think I mentioned that. So these decals are sort of well sealed in there, but it's not a bad idea at this stage to damage them slightly, because we do want an aircraft that's well aged, but I'm not going to go out of my way to actually go and fragment them more than necessary. I think they picked up enough damage anyway. Now, as I said, we have that yellowing on the decals there, and I sort of now need to spray a clear matte coat over there with almost the same type of yellowing, but you're never going to get it such that the yellowing on the decals disappears, because it'll just double up the amount of yellowing. But the point is to get rid of that bright white. So the next stage is spraying it to really dull it down. I did take off the nose wheel to put in a little brass leg, which I guess I will still do. But with the main legs, I've decided they can just stand on the doors. It'll sort of give it a bit of a lower appearance into the grass. Now I've got this board, and this is a little bit large. So if I put this aircraft on here, let's say it's in a corner inside a shed, that'll give you the sort of scale of how much space is left for diorama on this, which is not bad. I was thinking a little bit smaller. I was thinking sort of almost that size. But anyway, I have these boards. So probably just going to use that. The problem with this always is, where do I keep these things afterwards? I barely have space for any aircraft. And now I'm planning on, having these diorama boards. So I don't know. I mean, inevitably, I guess, somewhere in the garage. But for everything I do, something gets shifted somewhere else. That's what I wanted to say as well. Well, two things. So relating to building bits of shed and building and anything, when you're a modeler, inevitably you end up collecting all sorts of random little scrap. Now, I don't know if you're going to see the texture on this, but I mean, everyone's seen egg boxes. You can see it sort of here against that back wall, which gives it quite a nice, this is a nice egg box because it's got quite a large flat panel. For some aspect of the dioramas, I haven't sort of put my mind to that. That'll exactly be the shed for this one. But, you can often collect these pieces of texture and bits that'll aid your diorama from all sorts of interesting places, and egg boxes is one of them. So that will happen pretty soon. Oh yes, I wanted to mention this. So when I was packing out the specifically the Maritaka Harvard, not so much, a little bit present on the top flight, but on the Maritaka for sure. And I know you've seen this, when rubber bands go bad and firstly turn to sort of gooiness and then later just turn to brittle glassiness. So the entire box was filled with glassy elastic bands, the remnants of elastic bands, and a lot of it was embedded in the wood. So I had to very carefully take everything out of the box, try and carefully scratch off all the remnant bits of these rubber bands and vacuum out that box. And there's still a little bit, but sort of having to clean up the thing a little bit as far as the rubber band goes. And I guess there's not much one can do about that. I mean, I don't know what the lifespan is of rubber bands, but it's not as long as the kits. I don't think a rubber band lasts longer than a few years, maybe 5-10 years if you're really lucky. Okay, I pulled this out. I said this was very, very good. Now I haven't measured it for absolute scaleness. We'll still do that, but it is a very, very nice canopy. I'm completely happy with that. So now while I don't have a top flight one to compare to, I think this one is a whole lot better than the top flight. This curvature on the front here does appear to be very, very nicely done. So scale wise, I think this cowling is as good as it's going to get. The actual Harvard doesn't have a cowling that is a circle. It's less wide here than vertically. But for the purposes of this, standoff scale Maritaka Harvard, which I will try and improve on a little bit, but not ridiculously so, the cowling at least will remain just as is. Back to the Mustang. So I've showed this in previous videos. This is the wingtip fiberglassing molding that I did because I felt like learning to make them. And I greatly enjoyed doing that, and I just wanted a better quality tip, and I happened to put in nav lights. But it's not a scale tip. What it was just making a mold from the shaped piece from the kit. Now for the Harvard, I'd like to do a little bit better than this. And I do have the blueprints for the tip, so I might actually, because I've already have the other 1/7 Harvard, and I haven't done the tips for that, I might as well sort of use the opportunity to actually develop full proper scale tips for the Maritaka Harvard. However, that implies that that chord is correct for the kit. So if I go and take the blueprints, scale them exactly to 1/7, and start creating a mold, I might have to change the wing a little bit to suit it, and I'm definitely not going to be changing the blueprints to be off. My other Harvard is exactly 1/7, so I need to do 1/7 tips, and at best I did a couple of measures quickly on the length and wingspan of this Maritaka, and it appears to be very, very close, but I haven't measured chord, and sometimes they're off on chord, but that can be modified on the build. The other thing is, of course, the actual shape. The Mustang's wingtip is closer to the Harvard's wingtip than what it is to this molding, that's for sure. This isn't what the Mustang's wingtip looks like at all. But it's good enough for a model. It's way too thick, by the way. That's one of the things. Let me think. What was next? Oh yes. One of you asked an interesting question. While I'm busy modeling, what do I do? Am I just sitting there thinking? Am I listening to music? Now that's changed over the years because availability of things has changed. So going back to the 90s, I would have my radio tape on my desk and I'd be listening to radio, music radio. That was sort of a long period of doing that, which I quite enjoyed. Talk radio, really enjoyed that. Then as I gradually collected CDs, I was listening to a lot of my 80s music, bit of 90s music on the CD player as well as some talk radio. Mixed in with that was we had building sessions, visiting with friends. I'd go there or they'd come to my place and we'd both be sitting modeling and chatting about modeling, which was really, really cool. Netflix, since Netflix has been a thing, I do often have something going on my laptop, but I'm not really actively looking at it much. So I have sort of realized that I sort of half follow a story because I'm looking down at my parts, cleaning and filing and what have you. But I've also sort of, I've used up whatever was nice to watch on Netflix. So right now I really struggle to find anything that I want going on in the background. Sometimes I just run, the same story again for the second or third or fourth time, like, maybe watching the war movie Fury, but after a few times you've had enough of that as well. I'm struggling to find reasonable things on Netflix to have on the go. So YouTube has become a dominant background feature to my model building. So I'm generally not just building and having nothing in the background. I like to have something in the background. So that was a good question. What do you guys do? YouTube, Netflix, bit of music. I never really watch TV in the background. In fact, I barely watch TV anymore. The whole nature of TV has changed so much. An interesting thing which I thought I would mention, slightly related to modeling in a minor way, and slightly related to a backdrop for this diorama and other dioramas. On Facebook, on my feed, I've got a number of Facebook groups that are Mid-Journey, people's stuff that they've made in Mid-Journey. Now, if you don't know what Mid-Journey is, that is AI created art. And if you don't want to use the word art, call it anything, imagery, AI created imagery. And the folks that create these things can go, they put in prompts which allow the AI to create from the most absolutely fantastically ridiculous, weird and wacky stuff down to amazingly beautiful stuff. So I sort of collect huge amounts of Mid-Journey pictures for possible backdrops for dioramas and just pictures that I like. Some are crazy weird, but some are really, really beautiful. So, where I find interesting things, there's a lot of sci-fi related stuff. I haven't really found an background immediately usable for the aircraft diorama, but I'll look through my collection and I'll find interesting stuff. There's a lot of nature and very interesting sort of forest or landscape backdrops. So even if I have my shed there, I can print out a landscape backdrop to suit the atmosphere that you want. Sort of a sunset picture, a very misty picture, a very overgrown forest, which would sort of suit this. We'll see. So I don't know how many of you guys follow Mid-Journey, but very, very interesting stuff to see there. Okay, oh yes, a lot of you did comment that you're quite happy and quite keen to watch, you know, videos that sort of relate to the balsa and RC stuff alongside the plastic modeling. Now, balsa modeling probably constitutes 5% of my time, but I'll do it in bursts. You know, once I'll sort of get into something, I'll tend to stay with it for a while, but then I just change over, and I haven't been able to sort of change my habits. So for instance, that P51 wing, I had a very good burst getting up to that point, but then a couple of things slow me down, and then I change tack and go on to something else. Same with the boat. So the boat had a good burst, but then I sort of got to the point of the tapering machine, and while I technically have solved it, all I need to do is actually now do the tapering. I just don't want to mess it up, but I will do that soon, so that I can then mount the masts, which is 1, 2, 3. There's 3 sort of easy, when I say easy, easier taperings, and then these long rods. Now, they are very long, and they start off at about 3 millimeter and end at about 1.5 millimeter, and you know, that's a bit of a delicate one. We'll see how I handle that one, but the rods are not the most important thing. I can make progress and complete that boat up to, well, 99%, and still not have the rods on. They can be the very last thing. So that, you know, there's often something that just holds me up a little bit there. I will go and spray this. I think that's the next thing I'm going to do right after this video. I'll go and spray that so that that can start getting the next stages of weathering. So once I've got a matte coat onto there, which will completely dull this down, a slightly tinted matte coat, then I'm going to be doing watercolor weathering for patchy and rainy. I've got some photos of an aircraft which is really, really, really trashed, just from the elements, and I'd like this one to be very dirty, but not, you know, it still has to look realistic. You can't just go and apply a bunch of you know, brown watercolor. That's just not how it works. But I will cover each step as I go, and we'll see if it looks realistic or not, and put in a little bit of panel line wash. We've got a lot of nice recess in the ailerons there. How can I show that there? This light angle just doesn't want to catch. There on the tail plane as well. Okay, I have bought another door. So this table here underneath this cork covering, this is a door on top of a table, which is a very nice work area. I bought another door so that I can actually lay out a model fully, but I just don't have legs. I need to make something for that. But anyway, that's today's video. Happy modeling, and more next time. Cheers.